Have you ever wondered why God allows toxic, deceitful, and manipulative people to enter your life? Why your kindness is taken advantage of, your patience constantly tested, and sometimes even the truth in your heart is twisted? Today's video is not about condemning anyone. It's a spiritual journey. One that helps you see more clearly what you may have long thought was a curse, but might actually be a redemptive gift. A lesson of revelation drawn from faith from Scripture and from the very pain you've endured. Watch until the end, because every word in this journey could be the key to understanding why you had to go through that trial, and more importantly, how to emerge from it, not as a victim, but as someone refined by the fire. If you're seeking clarity, healing, and a deeper meaning behind the pain, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because what's coming next might just change the way you see yourself and your destiny. Part 1. The narcissist's arrival is not a coincidence. Life has never been a smooth, straight road. Each of us must walk through winding paths and dark valleys where the light of logic seems too dim to guide the way. And on that journey, we sometimes find ourselves in relationships that in hindsight leave us wondering, why did this happen to me? There are people who enter your life not to bring love, support, or empathy, but to confuse, and to push every limit of your heart. These people may carry the traits of a narcissist, and their presence doesn't just wound you. It forces you to question your trust, your understanding of love, and even your faith in God. Many believe that if God is real, He should only bring good things into our lives and shield us from all pain. But that belief is naive, a simplified image of a God who is far more profound and complex than we can ever comprehend. The truth is, sometimes what looks like a tragedy is actually an invitation for transformation. And the person who causes you the most pain today may be the very instrument God uses to awaken your soul to a deeper purpose. Let's shift our perspective. If everything in your life were always easy, would you ever feel the need to question anything? If everyone loved you the right way, how would you learn to discern between what is real and what is a lie? If no one ever made you feel lost in your own mind, you might never discover the inner strength that only emerges when you have no one left to lean on but yourself and your faith. That's why sometimes God doesn't stop you from meeting the wrong person, because it is that very person who will lead you toward the truest version of yourself. A narcissist isn't just someone difficult or self-centered. They are someone who weaponizes your emotions and your kindness to manipulate you. They distort your reality, make you doubt your perception, and erase your memories. And that is more than painful. It's dangerous. Because when you stop trusting your own mind, you become vulnerable, dependent, and lost in a world built by someone else's illusion. But it is in that darkness that something stirs you. Realize you can't keep living like this. You begin to search for answers. And sometimes, for the first time in your life, you turn to God not because you're filled with joy, but because you're drowning in despair. And it is there, in that rock-bottom moment, that the awakening begins. Because you can no longer lean on the one who hurt you. You can no longer excuse what cannot be justified. And you start to ask deeper questions. How do I know who's sincere? How do I protect truth in a world full of lies? How do I love without losing myself? These are not the questions of someone naive. These are the questions of a soul growing wiser through suffering. And that's what God desires for you, not blind innocence, but divine wisdom. You see, in the Bible, the lives of those whom God used were never easy. Joseph was sold by his own brothers. David was hunted by King Saul. Even Jesus himself. He wasn't embraced by all, but was betrayed, tortured, and crucified. So why do we expect that we can grow spiritually without ever being tested? God didn't place you in the path of a narcissist to destroy you. He allowed it so you could learn how to rise. So you could learn to distinguish between real love and counterfeit control. So you could learn to trust your intuition, set boundaries, and understand that kindness does not mean enduring abuse. You are not here to be a victim. You are here to wake up. And more importantly, this experience is preparing you with a sacred gift, empathy born of truth. One day you might be the one who helps pull someone else out of their own cycle of manipulation. One day you might be the light in someone else's darkness. But before you can offer that light, you must first face the darkness in your own life and overcome it. So if today you're in pain, feeling lost in the chaos of a confusing relationship, know this: God is not punishing you. He is teaching you. He is teaching you what no textbook ever could. He is teaching you that sometimes liberation doesn't come from changing the other person. It comes from giving yourself permission to let go. You are not alone, and you are not broken. You are becoming stronger, wiser, and closer to God than you've ever been. Part 2. When kindness gets distorted. Many of us, when faced with pain caused by others, especially those we once deeply loved, carry a quiet sense of shame. Is this karma? Is God punishing me? But that is a heartbreaking and common misunderstanding. The truth is, if you're in a relationship that is draining, damaging, and disorienting, it doesn't necessarily mean you've done something wrong. In many cases, it's not a punishment, it's refinement. A process through which God is strengthening your soul, shaping you into someone wiser, braver, and more prepared for a greater journey ahead. Look closely. The people who often fall prey to narcissists aren't weak. They are people with big hearts, loving, forgiving, and always seeing the good in others. It's those noble qualities when left without boundaries that make them ideal targets for manipulation. But it's also those very same qualities that make them chosen for the path of awakening. Because when you combine a loving heart with clarity and firm limits, you become a force no one can break. A narcissist is like a final exam in the classroom of humanity. They force you to question everything you once believed in: love, sincerity, morality, fairness. They strip away your certainty, distort your reality, and turn your efforts into perceived failures. But what they don't realize is the more they twist you, the more they tighten their grip, the closer they push you to your breaking point. And at that very breaking point, you begin to transform. You begin to ask questions you never dared to before. Why do I keep forgiving someone who isn't sorry? Why do I search for my worth in someone else's eyes? Why do I give so much that I lose myself? And as you begin to seek answers, something sacred happens. You start to wake up. You begin to relearn everything: how to love with boundaries, how to say no, how to listen to the quiet voice inside rather than the noise of the world around you. Throughout the Bible, we see a profound truth. The people God uses most were never spared from pain. They were betrayed, exiled, abandoned. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers. David was hunted by the very man who once adored him. Even Jesus was crucified by those who couldn't bear the weight of truth. These sufferings were not signs of failure, they were signs of calling. So if you are enduring deception, manipulation, and emotional exhaustion from someone with narcissistic traits, it's very possible you're right in the middle of that process, God's preparation for something greater. Not so you can become someone else's savior, but so you can become a living witness to truth, courage, and restoration. Here's the thing: a relationship with a narcissist doesn't just damage your emotions, it dismantles your perception. It makes you question your feelings, ignore your intuition, and lose sight of what's real. And when truth becomes distorted, the pain becomes more than emotional. It becomes a collapse of the self. But it's in that collapse that your truest self is revealed. No more illusions to cling to, no more excuses to rely on. You're forced to come back to yourself and come back to God. It's when every other foundation is stripped away that you find the one that never crumbles faith. It's when you no longer know who to trust that you finally learn to trust the truth within a voice God has been whispering all along, but you were too busy chasing counterfeit love to hear. And that right there is the greatest gift this trial gives you: reconnection with your soul. Don't confuse patience with silent suffering. Don't mistake forgiveness for permission to be hurt again. And never call the loss of your identity sacrifice for love. God never called you to be a victim. He called you to awaken, to rise in strength, and to be a light for those still lost in the shadows. And you know what? What you're learning today through the tears, the loss, the sleepless nights might be what saves someone tomorrow. It could be your child. It could be your best friend. It could be a stranger standing on the edge of despair who stumbles upon the video you shared. You're not just living for yourself. You are being shaped into a beacon of light. So don't ask, why is this happening to me? Ask instead, who am I being called to become because of this? And when you start to see your trials as opportunities for growth, everything shifts. You are no longer the deceived, you are the awakening. And that is the one thing a narcissist can never control. Part 3. Lessons. Wrapped in wounds. We grow up with a simple belief that if we treat others with kindness, they will respond in kind. That if we are honest, sincere, and loving, then love, sincerity, and honesty will somehow find their way back to us. And yes, in an ideal world, that's how things should work. But the reality is, this world doesn't operate on kindness, it operates on human nature. And that nature isn't always beautiful. One of life's harshest wake-up calls is the moment you realize not everyone thinks like you. Not everyone loves genuinely. Not everyone cares about the truth. Not everyone has a heart capable of empathy. And what hurts most is that this realization doesn't come from a stranger. It comes from someone you once trusted. In that moment, a part of you collapses. But right there, a new part of you begins to form, the part that sees clearly, that can no longer be easily manipulated, and that learns how to protect itself. Humans are not purely rational creatures. We are driven by emotions, ego, fear of abandonment, and a deep longing for validation. That's why some people will twist the truth, distort memories, and manipulate your feelings so long as it makes them feel powerful, superior, or justified. And narcissists are the most extreme example of that kind of person. They don't care about connection, they care about control. If you are an introspective person, someone who loves with your whole heart and believes in the inherent goodness of people, then your chances of being hurt are high. Not because you're weak, but because you haven't yet learned a crucial skill: discernment. The ability to tell the difference between someone who makes mistakes and someone who manipulates intentionally. Between someone who is hurting and someone who hurts others to feel powerful. Between genuine kindness and the mask of niceness. And without this ability, you're more likely to fall into emotional traps, ones carefully designed to exploit your compassion. And this is where one of the most important spiritual lessons begins to surface. Love cannot exist without awareness. Forgiveness cannot exist without boundaries. Kindness cannot exist without discernment. Because if you keep loving unconditionally without setting limits, you're not truly loving others, you're abandoning yourself. Think back, how many times have you said, "They didn't mean it. They're just wounded. They'll change if I'm patient enough." How many times have you excused indifference, deceit, or control by telling yourself, "They're just stressed. They've been through a lot"? How many times have you used your own empathy to justify behavior that's been hurting you over and over again? The danger here isn't just the narcissist. It's the illusion you've built around them. An illusion that makes you stay, sacrifice, stay silent, and even abandon your own values and self-respect, just to preserve a relationship that's silently destroying you. And in God's eyes, that is not love, that is blindness. A soul created to shine was never meant to be dimmed, just to keep peace with someone who doesn't value that light. And this is the moment you must understand: not everyone lives by the same moral compass as you do. Some people use truth to heal. Others use it to manipulate. Some seek connection. Others seek control. Some know how to love, while others only know how to use love to hook, to bind, to dominate. And if you don't see this clearly, you will be victimized not once, but for a lifetime. That's why what God is teaching you isn't just about one person. He's teaching you about the nature of humanity, about moral diversity, about how unpredictable people can be, and about your sacred responsibility to protect your soul as the treasure it is. That begins by letting go of illusions, like the belief that everyone is good, that everyone loves, like you do, that if you're kind enough, they'll change. The reality is, many people don't want to change, not because they can't, but because they see no benefit in it. They're content with manipulating, distorting, and deceiving because it gives them a sense of power. And the heartbreaking truth is the better you are, the more easily you can become their target. Unless you learn how to stay conscious while loving, you will keep offering your light to places that only consume it, never protect it. God doesn't want you to become bitter, but He also doesn't want you to remain naive. You are called to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves, Matthew 10:16. That means having a soft heart and sharp eyes, knowing how to love but also how to walk away, knowing how to forgive but also how to close the door. Because not everyone deserves access to your full sacred self. And if today you're beginning to wake up after everything the narcissist put you through, then congratulations. Because you're no longer living in illusion. You are stepping into truth. And the truth will hurt, but then it will set you free. Part 4. The truth is hard to hear, but it's what you need. Take a step back. Step away from the emotion. Set down the anger, the pain, and even the fragile hope you're still holding on to. Now look at the bigger picture. Humanity is complex and full of contradictions. We are not purely rational creatures. We are also driven by instincts. We don't just love, we deceive, manipulate, and destroy. And if you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, then you've been thrown into an intensive yet deeply revealing crash course on the true nature of humanity. In psychology, experts have confirmed that some individuals, particularly those exhibiting narcissistic personality disorder or other cluster B personality disorders, lack innate empathy. They don't feel guilt like others do. They don't experience remorse when they hurt people. Instead, they interpret everything through the lens of control and personal gain. Emotions are not something they cherish, they are tools to be used. Truth is not a value they seek, it's a substance to be twisted. Love is not something to build, it's something to exploit. If you've ever been entangled in such a relationship, you've likely noticed the pattern. Everything you say is twisted. Every feeling you express is turned against you. Every attempt to explain, make peace, or reconnect eventually becomes evidence used to make you feel guilty. This is not mere miscommunication. This is psychological warfare. And if you're not fully awake, you won't just lose your clarity, you'll lose your soul. In the Bible, deception and distortion of truth are grave sins. Satan never appears as something monstrous, but as something cunning, seductive, and manipulative. And the terrifying part is this: the most skilled manipulators don't yell in your face or hit you with their fists. They make you question your own reality. They plant doubt in your mind until you begin to think you are the problem. And once you believe that they've already won, the world doesn't run on morality, it runs on motivation. History has proven this. From tyrants like Nero and Hitler to modern-day authoritarian leaders, many of them beneath the glamour of power were individuals incapable of empathy. They manipulated crowds with promises, used fear as a weapon, and destroyed anyone who threatened the image they had crafted. Think that's just politics? Think again. It's happening right now in personal relationships, romantic, marital, even familial. Because this is human nature. Some people live to love, others live to control. God knows this. And that's exactly why He allowed you to experience this. Not to make you lose faith in humanity, but to open your eyes. Because if you continue to believe that everyone thinks like you, loves like you, and tells the truth like you will always be prey. And God did not create you to be prey. He created you to be awakened. Awakening does not mean becoming bitter. It doesn't mean giving up on love. It means learning to discern. Learning to look someone in the eyes and sense the motives behind the words. Learning to step back and ask, are they loving me or are they controlling me? learning to listen to the inner voice that asks, am I being respected or am I being manipulated? And most importantly, learning to say no, to walk away, and to close the door when you realize you're in a relationship that's slowly destroying you. No one teaches you this in school. No one warns you about this when you're young. Society teaches you to be kind, to be patient, to forgive. But no one teaches you that there are people who will climb on your kindness to elevate themselves. No one teaches you that forgiveness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. And that's why you're learning this the only way left, through experience. This lesson hurts, but it's real. And once you've learned it, you'll never go back to being who you were. Because you've seen the darkness, not just in others, but in yourself. In the part of you that stayed in a place where your soul was being slowly eroded day after day. This very experience is pushing you into a higher level of maturity. No longer a child dreaming in illusions, but a soul that has grown. A soul that knows how to love without blindness, to trust without naivety, and to live with an open heart and a guarded gate. That's what God wants for you, sacred discernment. Remember, you were not created to constantly prove your worth to someone who refuses to see it. You were not created to endlessly make excuses for someone who has no intention of changing. And you were not created to live in someone else's shadow, just because you're afraid to walk into the light alone. So if today you find yourself in chaos, if you're confused by a relationship filled with contradictions, don't see it as failure. See it as your final exam before graduation into a new life stage. And if you pass this lesson, not only will you be set free, but you might just become the light that frees someone else. Part 5. The narcissist is the mirror that shatters innocence. There are experiences in life that no amount of books, advice, or prayers can substitute, ones you simply have to walk through yourself. And one of those is the pain of being wounded by a narcissist, someone you once loved, trusted, and hoped would one day see your true worth. But they didn't. They only used you. And for a long time, you were innocent enough to believe that if you just loved them enough, they would change. The truth is far from what we hope. You can love deeply, give unconditionally, endure to the edge of your soul, but that will not move a narcissist. They don't feel your pain. They don't cherish the truth you struggle to protect. To them, love is a tool, kindness is a means, and your patience is nothing more than proof that you're still not ready to leave. And you stayed not because you were weak, but because you hadn't yet seen the truth clearly. When we love someone, we don't just love who they are. We love the version of them we imagined. And it was that version that kept you there. That wasn't loyalty. That was misperception. You stayed too long, not because you were foolish, but because no one ever taught you that some people don't want to change and never will. But don't blame yourself. Don't feel ashamed. What you just went through was a masterclass in human psychology, one no one else could take on your behalf. It taught you that kindness can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. That forgiveness can't heal a soul that chooses manipulation as its lifeblood. That love, no matter how sacred, must be paired with clarity. From this moment on, your innocence will no longer blind you. You will no longer believe that love alone is enough. You won't enter relationships armed only with your heart. You'll bring the light of awareness with you too. Because you've lived through the kind of hell most people only hear about. You've witnessed the gaslighting, the rejection, the deception, not in a movie, not through someone else's story, but with your own 2 eyes. And that, no matter how painful, is a gift. You think wisdom comes from books, from classrooms. No. Wisdom is born of experience. From the sleepless nights asking, was it my fault? From the arguments where you knew you were right, but stayed silent. From the times you forgave not because they deserved it, but because you weren't yet strong enough to leave. And it's these experiences that taught you what no teacher ever could: discernment. Now you begin to see clearly who's here to build and who's here to destroy. Who comes to love and who comes to control. Who speaks sweetness to nourish and who whispers pretty lies to lower your guard. That's when you awaken. You no longer need their apology. You no longer need their validation. You only need the clarity within yourself. And from that clarity comes a powerful lesson. Not everyone you love deserves a place in your life. Love doesn't always mean holding on. Love doesn't mean saving someone at all costs. Sometimes love means knowing when to let go. You may still feel regret. You may still grieve. That's human. But remember this, you didn't go through this because God wanted to break you, but because He wanted to forge you. And throughout the entire process, He never took His eyes off you. He watched as you collapsed, fought, doubted, and little by little began to rise. Because God doesn't want you to remain someone easily broken. He wants you to be someone who sees the truth and lives by it. And when you walk in truth, you won't be easily swayed by sweet talk. You won't be enchanted by empty promises. You won't fall blindly for dishonesty. Why? Because you've been there, and you survived it. And now, from the ashes of that experience, a new version of you is rising. One who sets boundaries, who makes inner peace a priority, who knows that emotional safety is more precious than fleeting passion. You no longer beg for love. You no longer overextend yourself just to be seen. You've come to understand that your worth isn't defined by others, it's anchored in the truth within you. And that is wisdom. That is power. That is the maturity God has been planting in you through your harshest trials. So if someone ever made you question your worth, thank them. Not because they were right, but because they unknowingly became the tool God used to wake you up. And if you're wondering whether you should share this journey with others, the answer is yes. Because you didn't go through all of this just for yourself. You carry a wisdom now that someone else desperately needs. Part 6. When pain becomes a call to awaken. If there's one thing a narcissist never wants you to learn, it's the power of boundaries. Because boundaries are the only thing that can slow down or completely shatter the control they hold over you. When you set boundaries, you're no longer their playground. When you say no, you're no longer their prey. And when you choose peace over temporary acceptance, you are no longer someone they can manipulate. But to reach that point, to become courageous enough to draw the line, you often have to walk through a spiritual crisis, the moment you realize that kindness alone cannot save everyone. Many of us were raised to believe that love means giving unconditionally, that forgiveness is the ultimate expression of compassion, and that if you're just patient enough, soft enough, forgiving enough, the other person will eventually change. But the truth is, some people will never change. Not because they can't, but because they see no reason to. They see no problem in using you, no guilt in twisting the truth, and certainly no remorse in draining you just to feed their own ego. So you sacrifice, you endure, you stay silent, you keep trying, and you call it love, commitment, forgiveness. But in reality, you're allowing yourself to be chipped away piece by piece. You call endurance loyalty. You mistake avoiding conflict for peace. And then one day, you wake up in the rubble of your emotions, your soul so exhausted you no longer recognize who you are. It's in that moment that a question rises from deep within. Does God want me to live like this? And the answer is no. God did not create you to be a sacrifice on the altar of someone else's manipulation. He never asked you to play the victim in your own life story. He certainly didn't call you to compromise your self-worth just to maintain the illusion of a peaceful relationship. On the contrary, He is silently, patiently waiting for you to stand up, say no, and walk out. Some people portray Jesus as the symbol of endless tolerance, as if He never got angry, never walked away, always opened His arms no matter how many times He was rejected. But that is an incomplete and misguided view. Remember, Jesus had boundaries. He did not allow others to derail His mission. He withdrew from the crowd when He sensed manipulation. He called out sin by name, even overturned the tables of money changers in the temple. He loved, but He was not used. He forgave, but He was never fooled. So if the one who loved perfectly still set boundaries, then why shouldn't you, a soul still learning and growing, be allowed to do the same? The truth is this: setting boundaries is not unloving. It is the highest form of mature love. It's when you know who you are, what you're worth, and you refuse to let anyone, no matter who they are, violate that worth. It's when you realize that kindness without clarity is simply an invitation for others to keep taking. And the moment you stand up and say, "I will not accept this anymore," that is the moment you break free. Make no mistake, the narcissist does not fear your anger. They do not fear your sadness. They're used to your tears, your begging, your pleading. The one thing they do fear is your calm clarity when you set a boundary. Your silence no longer desperate. Your gaze no longer clouded. Your departure without explanation. When you set boundaries, you're telling the world, "My soul has value. I am not here to be consumed." That is a spiritual declaration. It is a liberation. And the miracle is this: once you truly grasp the power of boundaries, you don't just free yourself from a specific person. You break free from a cycle, the cycle of relationships where your peace was always the price for a few crumbs of affection. The cycle of always waiting for others to change while you wither quietly inside. And then, something shifts. You begin to live differently. You choose more carefully. You pay attention to that uneasy feeling in your chest. You trust your intuition. You no longer fall into love with your eyes closed. You carry with you the light of wisdom, a light that can only be born after walking through darkness. You become someone the narcissist can no longer reach, not because you're bitter, but because you no longer operate on the frequency of manipulation. You've ascended to a new energy, the realm of clarity, the realm of one who knows that self-love is not selfish, it is sacred responsibility. So, if today you're standing at the edge of that boundary, unsure whether to stay or walk away, listen to your heart. Not the wounded heart shaped by the fear of loneliness, but the heart that knows who you are after everything you've survived. God is waiting for you to choose peace over familiarity. He is waiting for you to choose truth over illusion. Setting boundaries is the beginning of freedom. And once you are truly free, you don't just survive the pain, you rise from it. You see, what you just went through was not punishment, it was refinement. Not a period at the end of your story, but the opening sentence of a brand new chapter. A chapter where you no longer live as someone who hides their pain just to keep others comfortable. A chapter where you begin to live in truth, with courage, with clarity, and led not by illusion, but by truth. If you once believed that kindness alone was enough to make someone stay, now you understand kindness cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. If you once believed that unconditional love could change a person today, you've seen a deeper truth that love cannot survive without boundaries. And if you once thought that silence was the path to peace, you now know sometimes silence is the very thing that enables abuse to grow. But you've also seen this clearly. Pain didn't destroy you. It awakened you. It made you look inward, ask questions, shatter illusions, and rebuild your life on the foundation of truth and faith. It brought you closer to God, not in triumph, but in your most desperate moments. You are no longer who you once were, and that is a blessing. You've walked out of that relationship not just with scars, but with new eyes, a new way of seeing the human heart, a deeper understanding of yourself, and most importantly, a more honest, intimate connection with the one who created you. So if you are in the midst of healing, if you're still learning how to set boundaries, how to trust your worth, how to say no with both love and strength, then this video is for you. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are not wrong. You are being reborn. If today's message touched something deep inside you, if you saw yourself in these words, if you know there's someone out there who needs to hear this too, then please hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and walk with us through this journey of healing, recovery, and resurrection. This is not just a YouTube channel. This is a safe space where together we find our way back to the light after the darkness. Because in the end, you didn't just survive the pain. You became living proof that from what once felt like an ending, God can write a stunning new beginning.